Last
Welcome
week,
to
the
Economy
President of
Finance
the
Fired.
United States called a Republican senator
Today
and
we're covering
insulted
a
her
power
with
move shaking
profanity.
global markets.
She was not a Democrat, not a journalist, she was from his own party. Why? Because she voted to limit his power, and she was not alone. Right now, something is happening in Washington that we have not seen in years. Republicans, the very Republicans aligned with Trump, are organizing against him in a quiet, deliberate way, and over the most dangerous issue possible: the president's authority to take the United States into war. Imagine this: a president threatening to use military force against a NATO ally, senators from his own party voting against him, phone calls filled with threats and intimidation, emergency declarations that concentrate power. And all of this is happening right now, on January 14, 2026, while the world watches in disbelief. What I'm going to reveal today is not simple. It involves emergency powers, threats against allied nations, constitutional confrontations, and a president who treats every restriction as a personal attack. But I promise you this: by the end, you will understand exactly what is at stake and why this moment could define how power functions in the United States for decades to come. I want you to picture something. It's late at night in Washington. Phones are buzzing across the Capitol. Staffers are whispering in hallways. Senators are refreshing their screens, double-checking what they're seeing because what they're seeing doesn't make sense. The president is not attacking Democrats, not lashing out at the media, he is furious with his own party, and for the first time in a long time, his own party is pushing back. I've covered politics long enough to know the difference between theater and substance. Most of the so-called Republican resistance over the last few years has been pure performance. A concerned statement here, a furrowed brow there, and then everyone falls back in line and the news cycle moves on. This is different. What we are witnessing now are Republicans actively working to block presidential authority, not symbolically, but legislatively. They joined with Democrats to advance a war powers resolution, a formal move to restrict the president's ability to take military action without congressional approval. Think about what that means. Members of the president's own party looked at his behavior and concluded, we need to put legal guardrails around this man before something irreversible happens. That is not a policy disagreement, that is an intervention. And Trump's response was not to negotiate, not to persuade, not to try to bring people back into the fold, he erupted. Reports indicate he called Senator Susan Collins, a Republican who supported the resolution, and unloaded vulgar language and threats. Not persuasion. Intimidation. That reaction tells you everything. Because when a leader responds to constitutional limits with rage instead of dialogue, it reveals exactly how he views power, not as something granted by law, but as something personal, something that belongs to him. Now, before we go further, I need you to do something for me. If this breakdown is helping you see what's really happening behind the headlines, hit the like button right now and subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to keep peeling back this story as it unfolds. This kind of deep, no propaganda, no sensationalism analysis, only truth is exactly what you'll find here. So do it now, like and subscribe. So what actually triggered all of this? Let me be specific, because the details matter. President Trump has been publicly floating the idea of using military force to acquire Greenland. Stop for a second and let that sink in, because the first time you hear it, it sounds absurd, like a joke. It is not. The President of the United States has repeatedly suggested in public that military options are on the table for acquiring territory that belongs to Denmark. Denmark, a NATO ally, a country we are treaty-bound to defend. Senator Chris Murphy explained it clearly, and when he did, it landed like a shockwave. Because most people don't fully understand what the NATO treaty really means, Article 5 establishes collective defense. An attack on one member is considered an attack on all. That is the foundation of the entire alliance. It's why NATO has kept peace in Europe for 75 years. Greenland is Danish territory. If the United States took military action against Greenland, we would not just be attacking Denmark. We would be attacking the alliance itself. Let that sink in. The scenario lawmakers are now forced to take seriously, not as theory, but as possibility, is a U.S. president putting America into direct military conflict with Europe, with our own allies, over land acquisition. This is not normal. This is not strategy. This is the kind of rhetoric that in any other era would have ended a political career overnight. But we no longer live in that era. And that is exactly why Republicans are terrified. Because once a president starts treating military force as a real estate negotiation tool, the machinery of war starts turning, whether Congress approves or not. That is why the War Powers Resolution suddenly matters. That is why Republicans crossed the aisle. They were not making a political statement, they were trying to close a door before it gets kicked wide open. To understand why this is happening, you have to understand how Trump sees the world. Trump does not think in geopolitical terms the way most leaders do. He does not see alliances as mutual commitments, treaties as binding obligations. He sees everything as business. And in business there are winners and losers, leverage and weakness, properties to acquire and opponents to dominate. That worldview works in real estate. You can pressure a seller, you can outmaneuver a competitor. But international relations are not real estate. Countries have armies. Alliances have tripwires. Rhetoric has consequences that cannot be undone with a phone call. When you tell the world that military force is on the table to acquire allied territory, you are not making a deal, you are issuing a threat. Republican senators understand this. Many of them have sat through classified briefings. They have seen how quickly situations escalate. They know that words from a US president carry weight that cannot be retracted with a tweet. That is why they are scared. Not because they suddenly became liberals, not because they personally hate Trump, but because they can see where this road leads and they do not want to be there when it arrives. Let's go back to that phone call with Senator Collins, because that call was not really about a vote, it was a window into something much deeper. When Trump picked up the phone and unloaded on a senator from his own party, using profanity, issuing threats, treating her independence as betrayal, he revealed exactly how he processes resistance. He does not see it as democracy functioning. He sees it as personal betrayal, as an existential threat. His entire second-term strategy has been built on projecting dominance, total control, inevitability, the image of a man who cannot be stopped, cannot be questioned, cannot be restrained. Nothing destroys that image faster than members of your own party voting against you on national television. So he lashed out. Not with arguments, with intimidation. And here is what the senators noticed: it did not work. Collins did not change her vote. Neither did the other Republicans who crossed the aisle. They absorbed the anger, hung up the phone, and went back to business. That moment, that failure of intimidation, may be more significant than the vote itself. Because it proved something Trump has never fully accepted: loyalty in politics is conditional. It is based on mutual interest, shared goals, perceived benefit. When a leader stops providing those things, loyalty evaporates. And right now Republicans are doing the math. They are looking at the war rhetoric, the emergency declarations, the chaos, and asking, what exactly am I getting from this alliance? If the answer is nothing but risk, the alliance does not hold. That is the calculation happening right now in the Capitol, not ideology, mathematics. And here is where I need you to pause. If you have made it this far, it means this content is giving you real value. So let me ask you, have you subscribed yet? This channel is different. I do not give you sensational headlines. I give you deep analysis you will not find anywhere else. Hit that subscribe button now and turn on notifications. I'll wait. Now I need to talk about something happening in parallel, because the war powers fight is not the only front in this conflict. While Republicans were organizing around military authority, Trump made another move. He declared a national emergency related to Venezuelan oil assets. On the surface, this sounds like energy policy, securing resources, protecting American interests, but look closer. The timeline to actually benefit from these assets? Years, maybe decades. The required infrastructure? Massive. The primary beneficiaries? Multinational energy corporations, not American consumers. So why declare an emergency? Because emergencies do one very specific thing in American law: they concentrate power. They allow the president to bypass normal procedures, shift authority away from Congress and toward the executive branch. Emergencies are meant for genuine crises, imminent threats that require immediate action. They are not supposed to be strategic tools to avoid oversight. But that is exactly how they are being used. I want you to notice the pattern. Every time scrutiny intensifies, every time Congress starts asking uncomfortable questions, the temperature rises, a new emergency is declared, a new threat is emphasized. The conversation shifts from accountability to crisis management. This is not accidental, it is strategy. When everything is an emergency, nothing gets examined carefully. When every week brings a new crisis, last week's questions get forgotten. When the president is always fighting some urgent battle, oversight starts looking like obstruction. I have watched this playbook operate for years, and I am watching it operate now. The Venezuelan oil emergency is not really about oil, it is about control, it is about narrative, it is about keeping the machinery of government so busy responding to crises that it never gets to the slow, unglamorous work of accountability. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse has been asking pointed questions. Not accusations, questions. Why have promised document disclosures been delayed? Why have review deadlines been extended indefinitely? Why have legal timelines slipped without explanation? These are not partisan attacks, they are process inquiries. And process inquiries are what administrations fear most. When a senator gives a speech criticizing the president, it is political theater, everyone expects it, it changes nothing. But when a senator starts asking about Inspector General compliance, about missed deadlines, about chains of custody, that is different. That is the beginning of a paper trail. And paper trails do not care about political loyalty. Records are stubborn. They do not disappear with a tweet, they do not dissolve in a meeting, they sit in filing cabinets and servers waiting to be subpoenaed. The administration itself framed certain disclosures as urgent priorities, transparent, forthcoming. The rhetoric was clear. But the reality has moved much more slowly than the promises suggested. When that gap between rhetoric and execution becomes visible, credibility suffers. And once credibility is questioned, every future explanation faces deeper skepticism. For a president who treats every investigation as an attack, even neutral oversight feels like war. And that is the problem, because oversight is not optional. It is how democratic governments function. Let me tell you what Republican senators are really worried about. It is not just Trump, not just this presidency, it is what comes after. Here is the thing about constitutional norms: once they are broken, they do not automatically reassemble. Precedents set by one president become tools available to the next. If a president can declare emergencies to bypass Congress whenever convenient, future presidents will do the same. If a president can threaten military action against allies without consequences, future presidents will feel empowered to go further. If a president can treat oversight as sabotage and intimidate lawmakers who disagree, future presidents will inherit that playbook. Republicans understand this. The ones who have been in Washington long enough have seen how power accumulates. They know that defending a president today could mean enabling a different president tomorrow. One they do not agree with, one they cannot control. That is why some of them are finally drawing lines. That calculation is what is driving the revolt. It is not ideological, it is structural. They are asking, if we do not stop this now, will we even have the ability to stop it later? And more, the answer they are reaching is no. Once a president successfully argues that he is guided only by personal judgment, not by law, not by treaties, not by constitutional limits, the office itself transforms. It stops being a position within a system and starts becoming the system itself. That transformation is what some Republicans are trying to prevent. Now I want to bring this down from abstractions for a moment, because all of this has real consequences for real people. When a president threatens military action, military families feel it, they are the ones deployed, the ones who may not come home. When trade relationships destabilize because of erratic foreign policy, workers feel it, factory orders get cancelled, supply chains break, jobs disappear. When allies lose confidence in American commitments, everyone feels it, the dollar weakens, security arrangements fray, the world becomes less predictable. None of this is abstract. The rhetoric about Greenland and Denmark is not just embarrassing, it is dangerous. It makes European allies wonder whether they can still count on American protection. That erosion of trust does not show up in a single headline, it builds gradually, deal by deal, relationship by relationship, until one day the United States wakes up isolated in ways it never expected. And emergency declarations are not just constitutional concerns, they are economic distortions. When presidents use emergency powers to direct resources toward political objectives instead of genuine crises, markets get distorted, investments get misallocated, the economy serves politics instead of people. This is what is at stake, not just principles, not just norms, but lives, livelihoods, the basic stability that lets people plan for the future. When government becomes unpredictable, ordinary people pay the price. So where does this go? From here I am not going to make predictions. Anyone who tells you they know exactly how this ends is lying. Politics does not work that way. But I can tell you what to watch. First, watch the war powers resolution. If it actually passes with enough support to survive a veto, that is a genuine constitutional moment. It would mean Congress is reasserting authority it has allowed to atrophy for decades. Second, watch the oversight requests, the Inspector General inquiries, the demands for documents. If those processes keep moving forward despite the pressure, it means the institutional machinery is still functioning. Third, watch the Republican coalition. Right now, the opposing senators are a minority within their party. If that minority grows, Trump's leverage shrinks. If it stays isolated, the revolt fades. Fourth, watch Trump's language. When he feels cornered, he escalates, more emergency declarations, more extreme rhetoric, more loyalty tests. The more pressure he feels, the more dramatic his responses become. And fifth, this is the most important, watch what happens to the people who said no. Susan Collins, the other Republicans who crossed the aisle, the senators who asked uncomfortable questions, do they face consequences? Do they lose committee positions or do they survive intact? The answer will tell you whether the resistance is viable. I want to step back and ask a bigger question, because this story is not really about Trump. Not ultimately. It is about something older and more fundamental. It is about whether the rules that govern power are stronger than the individuals who temporarily hold it. Every democracy faces this question eventually. At some point, a leader appears who believes the rules do not apply to him, who treats every limit as an obstacle, who sees the Constitution as a suggestion rather than a restraint. When that happens, the system faces a choice: it can bend, it can break, or it can hold. Right now we are watching the American system being tested in real time. Emergency powers, war rhetoric, intimidation of lawmakers, treating oversight as sabotage, everything is pressure against the limits. And the limits are responding, not as quickly as some would like, not as firmly as others would hope, but responding. Republicans crossing the aisle, inspectors general receiving requests, senators asking uncomfortable questions, votes being taken that were never supposed to happen. That is not nothing. It does not guarantee the system will hold. History is full of democracies that bent until they broke. But it is also not inevitable. Systems hold when people make them hold. Let me leave you with 3 things to remember. First, this Republican revolt is real. They are no longer just criticizing Trump in private, they are taking votes, advancing resolutions, drawing lines they have never drawn before. Second, emergency powers are being weaponized. The pattern is clear. Every time scrutiny intensifies, a new crisis appears. The conversation shifts from accountability to emergency response. This is not coincidence, it is strategy. Third, precedents outlive presidents. What happens in this conflict will shape how power works long after Trump is gone. Shortcuts taken today become tomorrow's norms. Here is what I will leave you with: democracy does not defend itself. It depends on people. Legislators who take their oath seriously, institutions that prioritize function over politics, citizens who pay attention even when it is exhausting. Right now, some of that is happening. The resistance to Trump is no longer coming from the outside, it is coming from the inside, from people who know him, who have worked with him, who have defended him, and who have decided that some lines cannot be crossed. That is significant. It does not guarantee a happy ending. History is full of ignored warnings, missed opportunities, systems that bent until they shattered. But it is a reminder that outcomes are not predetermined, that choices matter, that individuals at the right moment can change the direction of events. We are in one of those moments right now. What happens next depends on whether enough people in Congress, in the institutions, in the public, decide that the rules still matter more than any one individual. And now let me ask you one final question. Do you think the Republican revolt will hold, or will party loyalty win in the end? Write your answer in the comments, I really want to know what you think. And if this breakdown gave you clarity on what is actually happening, give this video a like and share it. Thank you for staying until the end. See you in the next one.